I'm getting pretty excited about the impending doom of CBDCs. CBDCs? Are those new draft picks of Team LGBTQIA+? Shockingly not. It's Central Bank Digital Currency. It's coming whether you like it or not. Personally, I like it. That definitely doesn't sound like a part of a globalist takeover. What are central bank digital currencies? Well, you know how people love cryptocurrencies because they're decentralized and they give people complete control of their money? Yeah. Well, CBDCs are like cryptocurrency, but instead of being decentralized, they're as centralized as you can possibly get. Oh, so it's like cryptocurrency in the sense that it's the complete opposite of it. Yes. And is your digital currency controlled by blockchain technology so nobody can mess with it? No, it'll be controlled by the Federal Reserve so the government can always mess with it. That sounds amazing. Way better than crypto where everything is decentralized and you're the steward of your own money. And I assume CBDCs will be backed by gold, making them a digital representation of something of actual value? No, CBDCs are backed by the US dollar, which is not backed by gold.
I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
So CBDCs are backed with nothing of value, which is also backed with nothing of value. Exactly. Do you know what a pyramid scheme is? Absolutely not, but I'm really excited to go along with digital currencies. I mean, you're really talking me into them. Oh, and get this. You know how cryptocurrencies can be really volatile where the value of them can go up and down? A lot of uncertainty? Yes. Well, digital currencies are better than that because the government will control them and they're always doing things to devalue the US dollar, which means your digital currencies will do nothing but go down, which gives you certainty. So no more stress about the volatility of cryptocurrencies. Now, with this centralization of money that you speak of, does this mean that the government can monitor all your financial transactions? No, it doesn't mean the government can monitor your financial transactions. It means the government will monitor your financial transactions. Well, I guess that's a good thing, and if that's just all they do. Well, oh, it sounds like they'll be doing more than that. Yep. Can't wait to hear what else. Yeah, with CBDCs in place, it also means they'll be able to freeze your account or adjust your balance at any time, preventing you from using your own money and even taking your money from you? Yeah. I see how that could have a lot of upside. Yeah, just imagine how it could reduce domestic terrorism by punishing parents who speak up at school board meetings. You don't think your son should be doing a reassignment sculpting surgery during art class? Well, your funds are frozen, terrorist! And we're taking a little something for our effort. It could also help prevent people from trying to destroy our democracy by exercising the right to free speech. Implementing CBDCs will no doubt be what saves our democracy. This system could also get our elections back on track by punishing people who vote for the wrong candidate. That would be helpful. And I assume the World Economic Forum is probably against CBDCs. No, they're for them. Oh my gosh, I am surprised by that. Yeah, the WEF says that CBDCs will be the safest digital asset available for the general public. They'll do anything to make us safer. They also say that CBDCs are a risk-free form of money that'll be guaranteed by the state. Yeah, well, we've already covered that there's no risks with CBDCs. They eliminate the people that are the risks. And the WEF says that CBDCs will improve financial inclusion. Anything done in the name of inclusion always works out super well. 100% of the time. So if we can get a CBDC in place, oh, it's definitely coming, then instead of me having to control my own money, the government will control it for me, so I won't have to. Yes! However, for you to call it your money is a bit arrogant. Yeah. Remember how the World Economic Forum says you'll own nothing and be happy about it? Yeah. And people are like, that sounds crazy. How would I end up owning nothing? Well, CBDCs are how that happens. Great.
What up, Vigilantes? I'm very happy to be here hosting a fireside chat with Aaron Day and Ed Bugos. Aaron Day ran for president. He was recently on our channel here at the Crypto Vigilante, and that conversation went viral. Aaron brought to light the reality that the world is facing with CBDCs, what's happening in the crypto space, more specifically in Bitcoin and Bitcoin development. the government entrenching within crypto in very weird and unexpected ways. And today, I think it's important to just focus on CBDCs. And I brought along Ed Bugos, the chief editor and co-founder of the Dollar Vigilante and the Crypto Vigilante, to sit down with us and get more clarity. My goal is for this conversation to bring about more awareness regarding CBDCs. What are they? How much of a threat are they? How far into the horizon are we from seeing something very tyrannical? And so how about we just start off with a very open-ended question. Maybe who would like to go first? Aaron, would you like to go first? Defining what is a CBDC?
Well, a central bank digital currency, this is actually an interesting and complicated place to even start. So I think when most people think about CBDCs, they think about a currency that can be controlled by the central bank or a government, where their money can be censored and where their money can essentially be shut off and they can lose access to banking services, which is not actually true. Technically, fiat is already that today. So if you actually look at your current bank account, and if you look at the terms and conditions of your agreement with your bank, they can already cancel your account without cause. They can and do share your information and sell your information to third parties. They're already working with the IRS using AI to analyze your financial transactions. And so the real kind of next level to this is it's really kind of the removal of physical cash and adding even further surveillance features to it. So that they can literally program and ultimately track your behavior and a social credit system to your money itself. But I want to say that a couple of things. There are several ways that you can go about getting a CBDC, and I'm sure we'll get into the specifics of what has been developed in the United States and beyond. But in 2020, there were 35 countries just at the stage of researching CBDCs, with China being the only country really taking any action to build it out. Today, there are 134 countries representing 98% of the global GDP at various phases, including 11 countries that have already deployed CBDCs. Some of them have gone out of the live phase back to the pilot phase to work on some of the tweaking. But nevertheless, all of the major developed countries are accelerating their plans. It's current government policy in the U.S. under Executive Order 14067 for the U.S. to pursue a CBDC while simultaneously using a whole of government approach to crack down on all other digital assets, which is what they've been doing, which is why people like Ian Freeman and Roger Ver and a number of others are either in prison or out on bail, and why the SEC and others have been going after heavily corporations, and why we really only have in the US 4 major exchanges left. But there's a misconception about CBDCs in that there's this view of they won't be implemented because it's a threat to the traditional banking system. But the way CBDCs have been rolled out is in a 2-tiered system where it works the same way that the current banking system. It's the central bank issues the CBDCs to the banks. The banks still remain in existence. They're just using a more programmable digital form of currency. That's how it's been launched in China. That's how it's been launched in other countries. And that's what's being proposed in the US. The other misconception is that, this will never happen because it's a government project. And if you look at Obamacare and how badly that was screwed up, certainly it would be impossible for the government to implement something like a CBDC. The government isn't actually creating the CBDC. It is the largest banks in the world funding the smartest developers in the world. And in the case of the US, this has been going on since 2015. It really picked up steam in 2019. In particular, the retail CBDC Project Hamilton is a collaboration between the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and MIT, and it even includes a Bitcoin core developer named Corey Fields, who worked on SegWit and Lightning Network. And other pilots, like Regulated Liability Network, which I'll talk about later, involve the Federal Reserve of New York, multiple large banks in New York, the Bank for International Settlements. It includes technology by Bitcoin core developer Mike Hearn, who is developing a big piece of the entire infrastructure for the global digitalization of all assets. And so to make it clear, this doesn't really threaten the existing banks. You're not going to have an account with the central bank. You're still going to have a relationship with your bank. But either way, politically, we're going to effectively get a CBDC, whether it's through technically what would be defined as a CBDC, or whether they're stable coins where monopoly control of the issuance of stable coins, it can only go through banks, which is what most of the Republican legislation in the United States House has been directed towards. So, I mean, I'll leave it with that. Certainly there's a lot we can go into, but that's my quick overview.
So let me ask you a question before we move on to Ed. Would you say Tether then is positioning itself to be a CBDC or something like Tether?
I mean, if I look at the legislation that's been drafted in the U.S., the legislation that has been drafted, even by Republicans and with people like Loomis, who everybody seems to think just because she has laser eyes is somehow pro-freedom, involves only allowing registered financial institutions in the United States, which I don't believe Tether fits that category. In fact, the bills that have been put forward in the U.S. outright ban algorithmic stablecoins, and I suspect are designed to just make it so that only financial institutions, probably of a certain size, will be able to issue stablecoins.
Okay, right on. Ed,
yes, sir.
How would you define a CBDC? What would you like to add to what Aaron said?
Well, most of what Aaron said, I agree with. And Aaron, I appreciate your work, and I think in general, I don't think we're on opposite sides of anything significant. I have a slightly different take on things, though. Years ago, when I've been following the CBDC projects for some time too, and years ago, I concluded. And this is when the Frankfurt School first launched the project, and China was launching its project, I think back in 14 or 15 or something like that. And there was an initial reaction based on their framing of the CBDC as a central bank deposit liability. Okay, so a deposit liability, for people who don't know, is basically a bank deposit. So in that framing, people thought, okay, wait a minute. Are you trying to say that the central bank is going to open its doors for normal depositors, right? And I rejected that because of the what the ECB later wrote in one of its reports. Actually, it also identified this as disintermediation risk, right? And I find that really interesting because Aaron says that this is not a government initiative, and I disagree with that, because there's the BIS is basically overseeing most of the projects, and the countries that are leading the parade on this are socialist totalitarian backwaters, right? And even the policy that or the bill that Aaron stated, that's a legislative thing, right? That's not, and plus the fact that Aaron wants to fight this through politics, suggests to me that it's also a government initiative. But anyways, not to go too far into that. That initially I said that they're never going to be able to create a central bank actual deposit liability because of the disintermediation risk. So granted, they've created all sorts of different ways to distribute this. None of them include deposit liabilities at the central bank, right? So then wonder, well, why do they call it a liability, right? And then you see definitions like, well, backed by the sovereign credit. When you might as well say, just like the dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, right? It's still fiat. It's just fiat currency. So I concluded long ago that the best they will be able to do is to create some kind of government version of a stablecoin. But the difference between the CBDC and a stablecoin like Tether is that what you're getting for Tether is basically It's a token. The token represents either a bank deposit or which is a deposit liability of the commercial banks, or actual physical cash, right, which you could withdraw from the bank deposit, or whatever, right? So, whereas a government CBDC, as you said, they're aiming at one of the aims of this is to clean up the physical cash. So they don't want to really make it redeemable in physical cash, and they don't want to make it. It's probably redeemable in terms of a commercial bank deposit in some aspects, right? But in any case, so a CBDC to me is just basically really purely digital cash. It's not on a decentralized distributed ledger. It's a centralized shitcoin, right? And just like anything the government does, right? It copies from the market. It doesn't have there's no entrepreneurial spirit in bureaucracy, right? What you're getting here is basically the same fucking people who've been promoting the special drawing rights as money since the 70s. And they've dropped that, do I have time for a little bit of a history on the SDR? Are you guys familiar with the SDR?
Yep.
Well, for the audience, it would probably, a little history lesson would be good.
So before Nixon delinked from the phony gold standard, the Bretton Woods gold standard, which is phony because Americans weren't allowed to actually own gold since 1934, I think it was, after Roosevelt's bank holidays, and up to about 1975. So the whole period of the Bretton Woods gold exchange standard was one of these phony gold standards where it was where institutions and foreign governments were the only ones able to redeem for gold, not normal people, right? So, but the thing about that was that it was part of a scheme. What I find with a lot of cryptocurrency guys is that they think this history started in the 90s, right? But it goes further back than that. The dollar wasn't forced on us, okay? The dollar became a reserve currency naturally at first, right? Now, arguably since about the 60s, 70s, one band-aid after another to try to keep it all together. And there's, mutually beneficial relationships that have kept it all together because, most of the countries that have started a CBDC project are the countries with some of the worst currencies, right? So the whole process of the Bretton Woods exchange standard was to separate individuals' psychology from the fact that a dollar historically represented a weight. It was, you get a lot of people today that go, well, the dollar was backed by gold. No, the dollar was a certain weight in gold, right? The dollar comes from a word called thaler, which was basically a 1 ounce silver coin in Europe in the 15s and 1600s and stuff, right? And so when the Constitution was written, they made sure that people understood that we're talking about weights and measures, right? When we're talking about the dollar, they worked hard to separate the dollar from that thinking, right? They worked hard, making it illegal for several decades was one way. The Bretton Woods Agreement was a way for them to entrench the dollar globally, keep it as a reserve currency, which had already become a reserve currency because after World War I, when the pound lost its status, to entrench the currency as a global reserve currency without gold, right? So somehow they aimed at creating a way where the dollar could maintain its role as a reserve currency without being backed by gold, and they did that. By the late 60s, before the Bretton Woods deal collapsed, the French started to agitate because a lot of the inflation that the Americans were creating showed up over there under the Reconstruction effort and so on. So the French started agitating and saying, well, we don't like this US dollar hegemony, and so they created the SDR. When they created the SDR originally, they linked it to a gram of gold, I believe it was, or something, right? But then the IMF and others started to get involved. The IMF mostly started to get involved on behalf of a number of other countries, and they eventually turned it into a basket of currencies. Okay, they tried to make the SDR global money for many, many years. They gave up on that in the 90s. Okay, and really because you can't have. I mean, these guys will keep pushing for their CBDCs. They'll keep pushing for their SDRs. They'll keep pushing for their global currency, right? But a global currency that's a reserve currency naturally is different than a government issued and created reserve currency. And so it never gained traction because the problem is this: we all know what central banks are for. They're used to steal savings from people, right? Savings and income, right? So how are you going to have all these different governments agreeing on the proper theft rate globally, right? How are you going to have them agreeing, okay, well, we're going to have this monetary policy for the whole world, basically one set of interest rate. The ECB's tried this, right? And this is why the euro is sort of like, I wouldn't say it's a failed project, but it sure hasn't succeeded in pushing the dollar or gaining too much market share on the dollar, right? In terms of being a reserve currency. So for me, the CBDC, and the interesting thing was that when most governments gave up on this SDR in the 90s, China picked it up in the early part of this century. And they've been pushing it. They've been pushing for a global currency through the IMF called the SDR until about 2013, 14, when after Bitcoin was launched, right? So, and then they switched over to the CBDC. They dropped it. You don't even hear about the SDR anymore. Okay, so it's just another pipe dream project for the socialists, for the globalists, in my opinion, right? To me, they haven't. I get the idea of the fear of I agree that too much control and going in the direction of a social credit score is obviously bad. I'm a free market guy. I'm not a socialist. I don't like that trend for sure. But the thing that I keep arguing is that it's not the technology alone that's going to get them over the line. They've got to fight the economic obstacles, the political obstacles, and the legal obstacles, right? The fact is that in order to money has to be voluntarily accepted by the user to be money, right? So, anyways, I'll leave it at that for now. Maybe you have some comments.
Ed, thank you so much for that explanation on the history of the SDR, special drawing rights. Aaron, would you like to add to that?
Well, I would just say a few things. I mean, one, I don't think that the reason that I ran for president wasn't because I thought I'd actually influence the political process. I've been close to politics for 30 years. My stepmother started off kind of low in the Republican Party, ended up the co-chair of the RNC from 2012 to 2016. She was Trump's ambassador to Costa Rica. I've run a bunch of PACs. I have no confidence whatsoever in the political process, one way or the other. But the reason that I ran was when I found out how quickly it had been accelerating. I didn't view CBDCs as a threat in 2019 or 2020 because they hadn't been up until that point. But then all of a sudden, when I see people like Ian Freeman getting thrown in prison for 8 years, and I attended his sentencing hearing, and when I see other people getting arrested, that's what caused me to start researching this topic really hardcore. And as a data point, I exited fiat in 2019, so I've been living off of crypto, gold, and silver for the last 5 years. So I mean, I was already familiar with kind of the general developments in the marketplace, which is to say declining use of cryptocurrency as an actual payment method. But it's really when I started to look at, well, why are people like Jeremy Kauffman from Library and Ian Freeman being targeted? And that's when I actually saw how quickly CBDCs have been developed. And there are more CBDC accounts now globally than crypto accounts. And when you start looking at these things, and one of the things that's very frustrating is a lot of people in crypto, they fight amongst themselves and they're not paying attention to the broader market. The US retail CBDC pilot, Project Hamilton, can do 1.8 million transactions per second. Again, it's this idea that while, yeah, governments don't lead or innovate, but banks working in conjunction with the best technical talent have actually leapfrogged substantially. In fact, almost everything has leapfrogged crypto. I mean, if you look at in 2012, when I first got involved with Bitcoin, it was actually better, faster, cheaper money, in addition to being money that was separated from state. But that was before Venmo, that was before Zelle, Google Pay, Apple Pay. Even gold has out-innovated Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. I mean, these Goldbacks are actually better and easier to use for trade than using Bitcoin. And so, so ironically, whether it's a combination of complacency and the fact that Bitcoin was hijacked that now have put us into a place where we're actually behind technologically and people don't realize it. And even more troublesome than the CBDC itself is this thing called regulated liability network, which is another, I'd call it a CBDC pilot, but essentially it's a platform for representing central bank and bank liabilities on a common platform that interconnects with other countries and other digital assets. And so the whole point of this is to have basically all CBDCs and all digital assets on one common platform. So you have a regulated liability network in the US, you have one in the UK, you have one in Japan, and these things are all interlinked. And so behind the scenes, this is what they've been developing. This is what they've been piloting. And we could go into a whole separate conversation on the great taking, which is to say that since the 2008 financial collapse, we don't own our equities either. We don't own our 401ks or our public stocks. I mean, we already don't vote them through 401ks. That's already been given to BlackRock and Vanguard and everything else. But through changes in contractual rights and responsibilities, if there's a big financial collapse, we're not going to own our shares. The secured creditors in the form of the largest banks are going to end up in bankruptcy owning these assets. And this is going to be facilitated by something like the regulated liability network, which is going to be one common tokenization platform. But I actually don't view these things as nation state squabbling. I think there's been a 50-year movement towards technocracy, starting with the Trilateral Commission, where they've infiltrated countries from the top down, including the US and in Europe and in Japan, and they're kind of coordinating the strings. So what we see as BRICS versus this is just theater, because, you know, more behind the scenes, you see things like the World Health Organization and pandemic alliances and this move towards the erosion of sovereignty. And I think where this actually ultimately ends up, and I've got an article that I just submitted to Brownstone. It's about a 9,000 word article that kind of goes into explaining all of this in detail in terms of how the tokenization works and how these different technologies work. But I think the end game of all of this, if they're successful, is to have a digital currency that's actually backed by energy credits. And that is essentially that's been the long-term goal of technocracy since the 30s, which is to flip the economy from a price-based system to an energy credit-based system. And that's been something they've been working on for a long time, haven't had the technology to do it. And while it sounds outlandish, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, you can look up right now the Doconomy MasterCard. This actually exists. There is a UN Agenda 2030, the 13th development goal, which is climate action, branded MasterCard that shuts off when you use too much carbon. MasterCard over the last years has been building relationships. They have over 150 companies that are already integrated, from airlines to BMW to, you know, different sporting good companies across. There's a huge, large swath of these where they are already tracking carbon, already integrating it to financial payments, and already censoring and shutting off your money when certain behavior is hit. So that's where I think that they're going in the long term. And, to say whether they'll win or not, I guess the other part that even got me into this as well is, I mean, after watching COVID tyranny, it's pretty hard for me to sit here and say, oh, gee, they could never be successful at that. I go back and look at everything from the Patriot Act, which we got 45 days after 9/11, to TARP, which was passed 18 days after Lehman Brothers collapsed, to the CARES Act, which was signed passed 16 days after COVID was declared a pandemic on a voice vote. Every single one of these things, going back to 2001, has added more surveillance infrastructure, has added more bank secrecy laws, more KYC, more AML. They've been putting in infrastructure for decades. And we're mostly sitting here saying, oh, energy credits, they'd never do that, not realizing that they've already been doing it and they've already been implementing it. And they've already been testing it. So to me, something like this comes about in an emergency, which is the old problem, reaction, solution method of how they always roll everything out. So we get a cyber attack or we get a terrorist attack. You could see it happening any different way in America, where it's either illegal immigrants are coming in and therefore we must have CBDCs because we're not collecting taxes, or on the left, I mean, there are a whole, in fact, I've got a whole chart of because people always ask me, well, how are they going to bring it in? And it's like, I can bring you a chart. I'll show you a chart of different scenarios where there's an emergency, either coming from the right or the left, or where they will both have agreement. And where they'll both have agreement is on terrorism, and it'll be implemented. And they've already developed the technology. So the thing is, the CBDC technology exists, the regulated liability technology exists. We know the direction that we're heading in, and the question is, to me, I don't think there's a reasonable argument to be said that we're putting up any political fight, because all we do is get caught up in these manufactured polarity contests over, today it's going to be whether or not men should be able to fight in women's boxing. Tomorrow it's going to be some other thing. We never have any resolution to these. We're like a cat with a laser pointer moving from one thing to another. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, we get 100,000 new surveillance cameras installed every day. We get more KYC AML. Today, more banks are getting shut down. So I think it's highly possible, based on the arc of where tyranny is trending, that they very well could put one of these things in an emergency. And they certainly have been building it out with the best technical talent and putting resources behind it. And I will say crypto, in the meanwhile, has spent all of its time on meme coins and ICOs, and sitting around just trying to figure out how to maximize fiat value, just completely disconnected from what fintech is doing and from what central banks are doing.
Yeah, it really is a shame. But I've wrestled with this myself quite a bit, and I have come to the conclusion that it's just people being conditioned to live in fear. And you would think that people in crypto, libertarians themselves, would be right now figuring out, galvanizing around solutions that actually matter. But all around me, all I see is people who are just, focusing on getting as much as they can right now because they're scared. Doesn't matter. It's just, it seems as if that's the mindset. The mindset is stop worrying about everything else, stop trying to fix things, and just cover your ass. That's pretty much the sentiment that I keep seeing over and over again. And it's very disheartening. It's been very sad for me to come to that realization that a lot of people, I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction of human nature. And my question is for both of you, Ed, from an economic perspective, do you think that that's just a normal part of what should be expected before a financial collapse?
What part?
That people are just letting go of altruistic desires for the economy, for the world, and just focusing on just saving.
I don't know. I don't want to get into the psychological thing, because they're not focused. Saving is not what people are doing today, right? The inflation has the inflation and taxation has made it very hard for the average person to save any money, right? Savings rates are really at a 20-something year low, for example. But okay, so I have there was a lot said there. So I want to kind of touch on a few things. First, just on the idea that we don't own our shares or assets and voting. That's true. It's always been true through the 401k and up here in Canada through the RRSP and through margin accounts. The brokerage firms pool if you have a margin account or if you have a margin account, they pool your capital in with theirs. But you can also have a cash account, which is segregated. And my cash accounts, I get voting material all the time. Okay. So there are nuances there. Yes, that has been changing and getting more aggressive. Yes, for 50 years, the banks have been becoming more and more centralized, consolidated. The big banks have been taking advantage of the fact that they have a central bank. Okay, so now one thing I find in both of you and a lot of crypto guys is this push for using crypto as money. Okay, for many years there are gold bulls like Peter Schiff and who else? I can't think of any other names at the moment, but who just claim, who make the assertion that gold is money. Okay, I remember one of Goldcorp's original CEOs back 25 years ago built his company by attracting gold bugs because he would be out there saying gold is money, right? But gold isn't money, right? Gold was money, and now it's an asset. How did it become an asset? Well, one way is the way they've been maneuvered. They made it illegal to own. They detached the dollar from gold, all that stuff. Okay, but here's the thing. A lot of what you say is true, but here's the fight. The fight is on the economic side, on the ideological side, is to show people that this trend towards more centralization and more socialism is wrong. Because, like you say, we're 90% of the way there in terms of tracking and tracing and so on. So the obstacle to full control isn't really a CBDC. It's that people, especially in America, still have resistance to it, ideological and legal and so forth, right? So the fact of the matter is that when you have a new currency that has just showed up on the scene, the adoption cycle is going to cause these bull markets, right, like we've seen. Okay, especially in fiat, because the fiat is being destroyed at the same time. But here, that's the thing, because Gresham's law is with us, and Gresham's law states that people will use as money the overvalued money, and they will hoard the undervalued money. So as long as they're destroying the dollar, you would be almost foolish to try to use a rising asset as money, or a rising thing, if you want to call it whatever you want to call it, right? So to me, there's nothing wrong with it becoming with the assets, with it becoming an asset first, and then once adoption is to the point where it's more stable, then we can transition to something being money. But even then, we can't do that until we end the Fed. So ending the Fed has got to be at the top of the list. That's part of my argument, right? So we can sit there and cry about these CBDCs and so forth, but if we continue to have the Fed and they continue in the way they're going, and we end up in a hyperinflation and a Weimar type situation, it'll impoverish people. Socialists will get the upper hand. We'll continue in that general direction. But if we end the Fed, then the markets will choose the sounder money. But as long as the Fed exists, Gresham's law won't let us use sounder money. It just won't, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So that's why gold is now, it's not money, it's an asset, right? It's a currency asset. It's a special type of asset. And I've defined cryptocurrencies as in that class, right? Monetary currency assets. And you're right about the fact that the banks can solve the scaling problem. Any centralized entity can solve the scaling problem. For me, the question has been, why the fuck has it been so long? You know, why 20 years? Why is today I still have like a $3,000 limit on my Interact e-transfers, right? Why does it take 2 weeks to send wires? You know, because the reason is because the banking system is inefficient because of so much regulation bogging it down. The same thing in the brokerage business. You know, they've a lot of brokers I know they've wanted to trade crypto, but their firms won't let them, right? And so they've locked themselves in the dark ages. Okay, so to me, the CBDC is there's not any real innovations on it that I would say are ingenious. All they've done is say instead of decentralized, we're going to have centralized, and instead of trustless, you can trust us. Okay, but whether or not they're going to be able to impose a social credit score doesn't depend on whether they get the CBDCs through. It'll depend on whether people will accept that socialism, right? That's where the fight is. The fight is end the Fed, end the socialism, right?
But and this was a big part of what I debated because I did debate libertarian presidential candidates. You're not going to end the Fed through voting. The way you end the Fed,
no, I know,
is through a bank run. This is why, and actually switching to these alternative currencies. That's how you actually stop it. Nobody's going to vote. No president's going to abolish.
I don't disagree.
So this is why when you said, you don't understand crypto guys wanting to use it as currency. First of all, I would say from the outset, Bitcoin was supposed to be peer-to-peer digital cash. This digital gold narrative was actually explicitly hijacked by the very same people that funded all 3 US CBDCs. So the entire framing and change of what Bitcoin was supposed to be was deliberately and intentionally hijacked. So we've basically taken a technology and cut it off at the knees unnecessarily.
I agree, but the aim of that wasn't to implement the CBDC. The aim of that was to maximize mining transaction fees, right? So it's typical American cronyism. It's not.
I wouldn't agree with that, Ed, but that is an argument that you can make, but that was only possible by them imposing an artificial auctioning process called replace by fee. So if anything, what you just said shows, gives witness to the fact that what happened to Bitcoin was very well orchestrated to give you the illusion that you were going to get more transaction fees by using the blockchain less, which is what they did with this auctioning process. Whereas we did have the network effect and the market penetration and the demand to have Bitcoin as money, where we had merchants all over the world accepting Bitcoin.
I know that was the intent. I get that. I agree with everything you've said. But what I'm saying is the aim was to maximize mining fees, right?
But very specifically, the person, John Dillon, who funded that change was actually tied to the intelligence community and very specifically had an agenda that was he did not want Bitcoin to be able to be used as peer-to-peer cash.
I agree. I agree.
And then furthermore, Bitcoin went from being funded by this community-based Bitcoin Foundation to being funded by MIT. And it just so happens that the same guy that funded the changes to Bitcoin, SegWit Lightning, also funded all 3 US CBDC pilots and even used one common core dev on the US retail CBDC and Lightning. And so I do believe that it was intentional.
I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't. No doubt that the disruptees are trying to undermine it. No doubt about that. I don't disagree with it.
Well, and I think they have. I mean, like to the point now where, I would argue Bitcoin's not even fungible. You can't even use it.
I agree.
And so now here we are. People,
but there's a but. I have a view where I believe that even though it's not fungible, it still is a better peer-to-peer system than most assets. Like you still have to go through loops and jump hurdles to sell your stock and get cash, right? You still have to, even with gold, to get to sell your gold and get the cash wired to your bank account and so forth through a gold dealer. So the fact that you can still have a finality after 10 minutes or 20 minutes or a couple of confirmations in settlement, I still think that's very valuable. I agree that it's not going to be money, right? I agree with that, but I think that it will have a value for some people as a store of value, not as a medium, but as a store of value. And I think the transparency of the blockchain is attractive to some people, especially if they're worried about loss, because you can, if a large amount of assets are stored on the blockchain, you basically can't lose it unless you're an idiot, right? Well,
if you look at the stats, a lot of people are idiots.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm talking about whales, though. I'm talking about whales, right? And so, okay, now.
Well, I do want to interrupt with one thing, though, which is to say that in actuality, because I live on these things, so this isn't hypothetical. Gold is actually easier for me to use in a couple of different ways. One, I mean, whether I'm using Goldbacks directly or I have an account through the Goldback organization where I can actually transfer, not instantly. It takes a day to a debit card if I need to. So I never have to be in fiat. But if I do need to spend, I can do that transfer, or I can use other cryptocurrencies where, they don't have the transaction fees and the delay that Bitcoin would have if you're actually trying to use it on the L1, which still doesn't work. I mean, in the event, and what I'm worried about, because I think we're going to get CBDCs in an emergency. That's how they roll all of this stuff out. We're going to be in a worse situation than we were in 2017. If people all of a sudden had to try to use, I think Bitcoin breaks down even as digital gold in an emergency because of this artificial cap and trade system that's been put in place. I think it'll turn out to be a surveillance gold that's actually slow and expensive. But
if they get their way, yeah, you're right.
Well, they seem to be getting their way, right? I mean, I mean, now you've got people buying through WEF partner companies like BlackRock, where you're 2 levels removed from the Bitcoin. You will never have a Bitcoin in your possession if you buy a Bitcoin ETF. The Bitcoin ETFs are subject to the same rate taking.
But that's a learning curve, Aaron. I experienced it. My first entry into the Bitcoin area was through an ETF, and it took a year or two for me to realize, why am I paying a premium, and why am I why do I have to keep it in an account where the government could seize it and all that stuff, right? But when I could just buy it directly, it's so easy to buy directly, but most people just don't have that confidence yet. So I think that the ETFs will help onboard them. The same way that, like, the gold ETFs, when they came out in 2008, they started pushing gold ETFs. They still only represented 5% of the whole. They still today only represent about 5% of the total gold held in people's hands, right? So it's not like everybody just went into the ETFs, right? But fair enough, regardless of that. But that's just my opinion. My opinion is that people will, once they own the ETF, they'll start to consider owning it directly, right?
I mean, I've gone to 22 states giving talks on this, because what I actually do, the presidential race was to bring attention to this, but I go around to do 4-hour workshops where I explain fiat, I explain the CBDC threat, and then I actually give people a crypto wallet, give them some crypto, give them some tokens, give them silver, give them gold, and explain to them how I use it as an alternative. And most people, I think last month, only 0.4% of Americans use crypto to make a transaction. So it's actually on a downward trajectory. When I talk to people outside of our echo chamber, first of all, more people have heard of Sam Bankman-Fried than Satoshi Nakamoto, and most people have never even contemplated the use case of crypto as currency. Most people just think it's a speculative asset. And generally speaking, there's a negative attitude about it, but that may or may not change. Whether people will go from a BlackRock ETF even to self-custody is interesting because of this executive order 14067, they've been cracking down. So now we have four major exchanges, right? And this is the challenge that I have, because in the
that's where the fight is. That's where the fight is, right?
Well, so I would argue the fight is to do things that are peer-to-peer outside of all of these systems and with privacy, because that's actually what we need to fight this. But this has become so much worse. So I started using Bitcoin in 2012, exited fiat in 2019. And the last 3 years, every month, it gets more difficult to use this. So when I introduce somebody to crypto and they're like, oh, hey, I really like this. How do I go and get more? Now the process of going through the KYC and actually funding an account and getting crypto, and we have like 4 exchanges left. And now even Coinbase and the exchanges are working with the IRS using AI to surveil people's transactions. So you pull Bitcoin off of an exchange, the IRS knows who you are. So I mean, yeah, you may have it in self-custody, but the IRS has also just passed rules that say you have to report your self-custody holdings. So with this regulated liability network, we're not too far away from you're going to have to register your Bitcoin on this ledger, or you're not going to be able to use it. It's going to be a whitelist, blacklist type feature.
No doubt. As long as the socialist trend continues, we're fucked. It doesn't matter what you call your CBDCs. They outlaw everything else. You'll probably have black market cryptocurrencies that rise and so on. I mean, what I'm saying is that's where the fight is. The ideological fight. We got to push back against the socialist winds, right? Otherwise, you could train people about cryptocurrencies, but it's not going to gain traction if most people, are socialist minded.
Right? So this is why I wrote this book. And when I go around the country, it's not I'm here pitching crypto. I'm pitching alternative assets as the solution. But people have no idea what's going on. When I talk about technocracy, when I talk about energy credits and MasterCard tying, people don't know this. Now, what they do know, and again, some of this is only because of COVID tyranny, there are millions of people that have woken up as a result of COVID tyranny. And there are even more people that are waking up because they're feeling inflation. People that we're not talking about the Federal Reserve and the Fed. So there's a universe of people out there that are not the people that are currently, in the crypto community. That's the thing that I've been saying is the people that I talk to, I'll do these workshops in front of 100, 200, 300 people, and they are not what you would expect. The typical crypto, it's 90% guys in their 20s and 30s. This is I did one in San Jose in Silicon Valley. I'd say the average age was probably 60. They were mostly boomers. Most of them never had crypto before, but they were completely energized they're very well versed in the UN Sustainable Development Goals and Klaus Schwab and WEF, and they're active and they're eager and they're hungry for solutions and willing to actually test stuff out. That's what I think that the opening is for this. And I think that this is going to work the same way any technology startup works or any idea, where it's not going to get mass adoption right away. You're going to go through a period where you have your innovators, which are the first 2.5%, then early adopters, which are 13.5%, and then you go to early majority, late majority, and laggards. Right now, we're still in you got to get those innovators first. And unfortunately, at least on the crypto side, we've been fragmented into 20,000 different pieces on the innovator side, but there's at this point, we can go out and find new people for that innovator segment, which are people that are probably not in crypto today. And at least those are the people that I've been talking to mostly.
So a couple things. On the Goldbacks, I just want to make a quick comment. I don't have access to my notes. I looked at them. I really believe that there's a large premium on them, and from what I've looked at, and their use as a medium of exchange really is sort of like within a community of believers who will absorb the cost of that, right? If they want to redeem the actual gold. But so you can't avoid that. I've talked to people who have been trying to create other similar gold-backed types of currencies in Europe and elsewhere, and you can't get away from those from the cost, from the difference between the cost and the actual gold value, right? So you always end up paying a premium. You might disagree with that, but that's what I've found. Now, I want to challenge you somewhere more directly, though. So, China, obviously, they cracked down in 2020, right? So they cracked down on Bitcoin in 2020. They killed all their exchanges, and they started to implement the CBDC. So that's been 4 years underway. Now, you tell me that it's very successful, but the data that I have is, the internet will spew out things like, well, they've got 260 million wallets, or 360, I don't remember the number. They've got adoption in 26 cities and so on. But in China, there's 700 cities, right? And the money supply in China, when you look at the adoption, the issues of digital yuan compared to the issues of yuan, the digital yuan still only represents 0.16% of the total money supply of China, which is $68 billion. Okay, now at Bitcoin's height in 2017, or for Chinese, anyways, when the Chinese in 2017. They controlled most of the market, right? They controlled most of the miners. They controlled 20 to 50% of the supply of Bitcoin, right? That was pretty fast adoption from 2010 to 2017, okay? And today, that amount would be worth about $500 billion. But the total value of digital yuan is only 68 billion. Issued today. So to me, it's like they're not really gaining that much traction. And let me share something with you. Can I? Can I share a screen? Okay. So in this article, I don't know, they cover Chinese news. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're Chinese or what. But it was written in November 23rd, right? And they promoted how well it's doing, blah, 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 blah. And then you come down to here. Oh, where is it? Sorry. Went too far. Here it is. So I'll read this out loud, just this paragraph. According to the PBC, 261 million people set up an eCNY wallet by the digital yuan wallet by the end of 21. Transactions using the digital yuan reached 1.8 trillion, with a total of 16 billion digital yuan, value of 2.25 US billion in circulation as of the end of June 2023. Okay? So I said 68 billion, but they're saying 2.25 billion. So digital yuan in circulation accounted for only 0.16% of China's M0 money supply, a small balance with many transactions, which means that the velocity is high and more efficient. So they're just trying to emphasize the scaling advantage that all centralized systems will have. Yet, despite circulating through the economy quickly, thereby contributing blah, 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 bullshit, uptake of the digital yuan has been slow, with the main obstacle being that the Chinese population is already accustomed to using private electronic platforms, blah, 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 blah. Although the currency introduces functionality such as offline transaction, blah, 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 the public has not yet been convinced to change their payment habits. All right. And then I just want to show you some more numbers here. Here it is. So I asked Chat AI to give me a table of the leading, most successful launches so far, right?
That data is all old, though.
Is it?
Yeah, ChatGPT doesn't have, this is probably not real-time data.
No, it is. It is. I just showed you the article from 2023. I got that from Chat. I'm using Chat 4.0. It's much more up to date. It's come a long ways over the last year. Seriously. You can look up this data, and maybe it's wrong. If you got better data, show me. I don't know. But this is the data that I've got, right? So, and that 0.16% money supply came from the 2023 article that I just showed you in November, okay? So as a percent of total transactions, here's the last column, right? China's got the highest at 5%, the Sand Dollar 1%, Dcash 2%, and so on, okay? Now, what I want to emphasize here is that even in a totalitarian nation where they've outlawed Bitcoin altogether, they still can't get enough traction, and they can't get the traction they got with Bitcoin in the voluntary market space.
I see. Okay.
Okay, is what I'm saying. Okay. And the Chinese one is the example that everybody says is the most successful, the most advanced, right? Well, we don't have a socialist system yet, right? But that's what they're going to have to do if they even want a chance at this. But the Chinese situation is fragile, right? We're seeing a lot of immigrants show up on shore in Colombia and Ecuador now, and immigrating to the U.S. Chinese. I mean, we all thought they were Nigerian and others, but they're Chinese, right? So, anyways, so I think the Chinese system is in trouble, right? The last thing I want to mention is that I want to emphasize that governments they can't create money. If they do this, in the US, if they implement a CBDC, it will destroy the dollar's position as a reserve currency. All the work they put into it last century will be out the window. Okay, so that's if they do this. Now, if they do it after the dollar has collapsed, after the system is socialist, well then they might be able to do it. But even then, we know from socialism that from economics that socialist money doesn't work. And let me share something further on that in an article that I wrote a little while ago. Sorry for taking up a little bit of time here, but I'll try to be quick on this. Okay. So first of all, your premise is that they're going to wait for an emergency to implement the CBDCs.
Yeah,
I want to show you that Jim Rickards. You know who Jim Rickards is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's what he said about gold in the days of the SDR, just before the SDR finally died, actually. The next time there's a crisis, which, as I say, could be any day, it's definitely imminent. I'm reading down here. The only source of liquidity is going to be the IMF world money, which they have a funny name for. They call it the special drawing right. But just think of it as world money. They don't want to call it world money because that would scare people, but that's what it is. They will print trillions of SDRs. Notice I didn't say trillions of dollars, trillions of SDRs. That's where the money will come from. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that this is the same thesis that's being applied, that was applied with the SDRs, right? Is that it'll be done in an emergency. Now, here I want to quote Rothbard, okay? It's more of a paraphrase of Rothbard, but let me read it. So, socialized currencies are simply not money, but are more akin to Soviet ration tickets. When that shoe eventually drops, this was back in 2011, just before Bitcoin was even barely known. When that shoe eventually drops, the old order may try one last throw of the dice with their IMF SDR gambit or their usual joker card, a global world war, which we're seeing. However, these efforts will also fail, claims Rothbard. Really? The revolutions of the last few hundred years, particularly Industrial Revolution, have made the world too complex for the old order to rule over in the manner to which it aspires. Yes, it can rule agrarian, non-industrial societies as it did with the Inca, the Roman Empire, the Athenian, whatever, though you'll notice that none of these once mighty edifices lasted. However, the world's population will no longer stand for such serfdom and penury, even if it currently tolerates a pelf extraction rate of 40 or 50%. The ratchet of liberty has clicked, and there's no turning back the mass industrial technological clock. Now, I share Rothbard's optimism. I say, if you guys want to bring on the CBDCs, all you will be doing is pushing more people into the cryptocurrency market. Right. So to me, that's basically what this is saying. What that quote is basically saying, as well as a few other things. But the main thing is governments can't create money. Right. They didn't create the dollar. They didn't create the franc. They didn't create the euro. When they created the euro, they launched it alongside of what was called the Central Bank Gold Agreement. that forced the European banks that shorted gold in the 90s to buy back their gold. But it did that in a very public way. They could have kept that secret, but they did it publicly because they wanted people to associate the new euro with gold. They wanted people to think, oh, the banks actually will have gold, right? Same reason with China's BRICS currency. So after it abandoned the SDR, it went with this BRICS and also the CBDC, but they're trying to create the BRICS regional currency, the bloc, right? And but everybody knows they've been buying gold, right? So a lot of gold bugs already believe that the BRICS currency is going to be backed or implied to be backed by gold. In Zimbabwe, they've had many currency crashes, and the newest currency they've created a gold-backed currency. So now, I know this is just a promise, and who's going to believe the Zimbabwe central bank, right? But the point is, they know that, and that's why they're trying to attach gold to it, right? The point being that ultimately, money is determined by the people. Okay, you can't just force money on people. So, if they try to force the money on people that they don't like, you're going to see new money evolve, and they know that. They're not going to risk the dollars, all the work they've done in putting the dollar in the center of the reserve currency spectrum by trying to issue a new CBDC. But it totally makes sense to me that the Fed has been dragging its feet on this, right? Because they're trying to pretend like, okay, we're looking into it, but they're dragging their feet on it. All the socialist countries are doing it first. The Fed is very smart. The Treasury is very smart.
The Fed isn't dragging their feet on it. The Fed is dragging their feet on it in what they say publicly. Behind the scenes, they've been funding this for 9 years.
No, I know they have, but they're still dragging their feet on it because there's too much resistance from the bankers, from the political landscape, and so on, right? But also for another reason. There's another reason, because they're smart enough to know that all the other guys with the shitty currencies, they want, so often they promote, they'll promote, for example, you see Japan and even China, they're not totally socialist. They're kind of Keynesian socialists, right? So, but they're that because the Americans have promoted that type of system, right? They haven't promoted laissez-faire. They've promoted a Keynesian type system for most central banks around the world, and they've done that because it makes their currency relatively more appealing when other countries resort to too much inflation, right? So in my opinion, the Fed is sort of like, we can't do the CBDC here because it'll destroy the dollar, it'll destroy the banking system, and the Fed works for the banks. You got to remember, the Fed was created by the banks, right? A certain group of banks, fine, but it was created by the banks. And I think those banks are too smart to think that we're going to totally consolidate and centralize the entire banking system through the Fed without that risking the dollar's position as a reserve currency.
Well, I mean, what's his name? Bernstein, the senior economic advisor, has actually stated that the dollar should lose its global reserve status. It's currently on the way to losing its reserve status. Its use in trade has dropped from 84% to 58%. In fact, just to take a higher level look at this, every fiat currency in human history has failed, and the state will destroy every currency, including debasing precious metals. So, I mean, I think that
it can't debase precious metals.
Well, they can physically debase precious metals, which in fact they've done. So what I'm saying is,
you mean if the precious metals are money, they debase the quantity of precious metals?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, or they use paper versions of it and they do shenanigans. We still don't even have an accurate audit of Fort Knox. I mean, the real problem here is there's 100% failure rate of fiat currencies or even state-based currencies. But as to whether or not they'll do this, I mean, I look at the Atlantic Council where you can actually see the growth of the development of CBDCs. And in terms of China adoption, they're waiting for a crisis. And if you look at what they actually did with COVID in terms of not only money printing, but putting in surveillance infrastructure, I mean, even contact tracing, the amount of surveillance, every time we go through one of these emergencies, they put in more surveillance. They never take that back when the emergency goes away, and all of that builds. So in my opinion, of course, they're not going to roll out a CBDC right now. What they're doing, and what they're doing quite successfully, by the way, with Executive Order 14067, is they're making sure they can clamp down on crypto first, because they want to make sure that crypto isn't an alternative. And I think they've actually done a pretty good job of that when you consider how fragmented everybody is, and how the only use case that people now have for the thing that had the opportunity to be the solution for peer-to-peer cash, people are buying through multiple intermediaries, and it's been hobbled to remain slow and expensive. So yeah, the Fed isn't going to go out and say they're going to pull the trigger until there's the emergency. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, for 9 years, they've been developing the technology. They've been perfecting the technology. I've actually talked to devs that worked on it. I talked to a dev from the Federal Reserve of New York who said when they're going to roll out the US CBDC, they're going to roll it out in conjunction with regulated liability networks.
In their wet dreams. I don't doubt that they're doing all that. I don't doubt that the development is underway. But what I just, in their wet dreams, that they'll be able to implement a social credit score. Sure, maybe they'll be able to issue a digital cash. Right.
We already have. I think the idea that we don't already have social credit scores is absurd. I mean, what do you? I mean, if you just look, we just don't have a good user interface for it. I mean, what do you call having retirement plans that used to be defined benefit to then saying, well, we're going to pass the Revenue Act and we're going to have 401ks where we use tax incentives and penalties? I mean, basically, that's a form of a social credit score.
But they don't need CBDCs to apply that. As you said, they're 90% of the way there.
But if the broader context of this is a global initiative that's been going on for 50 years, the global context for this is one world government. And what they have not
this is ever... What I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, though, Aaron. This is where the SDR failed. This is why the SDR failed. You can't have a global government coercive forced currency and try to create a reserve currency out of it. This is what I've been trying to elucidate is that it's the same dream that they've had for the SDR. Sure, you could have said all for 50 years, like even Jim Rickards to the last day was convinced the SDR was coming in.
Yeah, but
so the way that I personally, that I've been able to understand this is that there are really stupid, economic literate globalist bankers, and then there are those who are like intelligent and they understand the market better, and they understand that the tyrannical initiatives of those who are dumber will do away with the machinery of theft that they already have instilled. So it's a balancing act. And so what if between both of your perspectives we find a more a middle way, which I would call more of a gradualism, that, Aaron kind of pointed out. They've been working on this for 50 years. This is their overall goal. I think you agree with that, right, Ed? That this is their overall goal. And I will want to bring something back that you did not want to talk about, Ed. And it's the fact that that you want to emphasize education, but there is a psychological component to this, because we do have the technology, we do have the means, to get the information. But what I've noticed is that there is a very well deployed psychological operation to lead people into giving up their rights, like we saw with COVID.
I don't disagree with that.
Sorry for cutting you off, Aaron. You were saying?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, do I think that their plan will work? No, I think they'll destroy the planet in the process. So I want to separate out whether or not I think what they're trying to do is going to work. I mean, certainly communism has been tried many times, and tens, if not hundreds of millions of people have perished in the process. So I'm not saying that I think that their grand plan is a good one, but that doesn't mean they're not going to try to implement it. And I find it difficult, having been involved in politics and activism for so long, to have a lot of confidence or excitement about how much socialism people are willing to accept. I mean, I look at it as the Bill of Rights is already shredded. I think America 1.0 is already finished. And so for me, this all comes down to this. They'll roll it out in an emergency and people will accept it unless there's an alternative. If there's no alternative, then people will accept it. People took COVID tyranny. The fact that that went as far as it did is that's the only shock. The only shocking thing about COVID was how much people complied. But then when you look at younger people, even things, I saw a Cato thing that 35% of Gen Z is okay with the federal government putting surveillance cameras in the home to look at for domestic violence. The Marxist indoctrination is over the top. So my entire approach to this has been, we have to build an alternative for that point in the emergency where we give people a choice, because we can't control whether or not there's going to be a problem. I think we could probably all agree at any moment in time, even right now, there's more instability in terms of probably civil unrest, the world war, potential cyber attacks. I mean, who knows what's going to cause it, but there's 10 different things right now that I wouldn't be surprised if I saw on the Twitter feed that popped up. And so part of the way that I look at this, and part of my issue with Bitcoin, is they are the psyop on Bitcoin to get people into thinking that this is going to be the alternative, maybe the biggest psyop of all, because it's got people dumping their fiat into it, but in a way where they're going to be able to track it. They're putting it into huge, heavily regulated. They'll be able to confiscate BlackRock owned Bitcoin faster than FDR was able to confiscate gold.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's right.
I have some questions about that. I can't dispute it. I can't say they won't confiscate your Bitcoin. But again, that just shows where the actual fight is, right? We got to fight the socialists on ideological grounds. We got to open up minds. We got to increase the number of libertarians, which I am optimistic actually that we have done. I think the libertarian movement, if you look back to the 70s, when Rothbard was part of a handful of libertarians, we have a lot more libertarians. I mean, the Dollar Vigilante, our newsletter, is a product of the late stage growth of the libertarian movement, right? In a sense, it has an investment focus, but definitely that philosophical focus is we're all anarcho-capitalists there. Let me ask you this. Can you describe an emergency situation where the CBDC would be part of the perceived solution to the crisis?
A terrorist attack on American soil,
so let's just stick with that. Let's say that happened. And let's say that somebody blew up a nuke in New York or something, right? Obviously, everybody would be like ready for war. The state would clamp down, as you suggest, right? Now, but how would it? And look, when Germany went to war, went to war in World War I, they shut down the stock markets. They shut down everything. The only thing people were able to buy were government bonds. Okay, so I don't doubt that in a state of war, the government's going to clamp down on everything. Okay, but the gold. See, the gold was confiscated because people bought the argument that the banks were going to go down, and if the banks went down, capitalism would go down. Okay. People bought that argument, so they and not only that though, they were tricky. They were when FDR outlawed gold, he said it was temporary, right? And as you know, what happens then, right?
Yep.
So they snuck that in, but the confiscate the outlaw of gold ended in the mid-70s. And it ended because libertarianism was born. The pushback started to happen, okay? And as I said, I think we're a bigger crowd now than we were then. But my question was, under that situation where you have a terrorist attack on U.S. soil, how would people perceive the CBDC as being beneficial to them?
Well, it's already, if you read I've read the legislation that the Republicans have pushed in Congress, people like Cynthia Lummis, and they already have language in there. This relates to trying to regulate out Tether and trying to ban algorithmic stablecoins. They already and this is on the Republican side.
I buy all that.
With laser eyes.
Yeah,
it's all terrorism and money laundering, because fiat currency and cryptocurrency is used to finance terrorism and used in money laundering and used in human trafficking and drugs and everything else.
And not nearly to the extent that the dollar in the banking system is.
Well, of course, you know that and I know that, but that's not how the propaganda works. So you're asking how this is going to be passed psychologically, how the propaganda is going to work, because, by the way, it already works. I mean, again, these are the Republicans that are pushing these bills. There isn't any opposition. There is no libertarian opposition in the United States Congress. The best case scenario you have, what people are clamoring over after this absurd Bitcoin conference, is Cynthia Lummis, who I've written about extensively previously after having analyzed her bills. She wants more KYC. She doesn't want any privacy coins. She wants exchanges more heavily regulated. She wants anybody that's not a bank out of stable coins. And she wants only things that are completely open and transparent. This is the champion of freedom that people are pinning their political hopes on.
Well, I believe that most libertarians have given up on the political process, though. So what you have left there is sort of like a libertarian class who still wants to believe that they can achieve liberty through politics, right?
Well, I guess what I would say is I don't even know if we're disagreeing. I'm going around the country talking to thousands of people, warning them about the threat of, it's not even socialism, I call it global technocracy, in which elites pick scientists and engineers to make decisions for us. It's the end of free will. But more importantly, what we need is a solution that actually works. We need something that is easy to use as what they're going to propose and introduce. And if we don't have that, then they will accept tyranny by default, because that's what we've had all the way from the Patriot Act to the CARES Act. I mean, they didn't even do a roll call vote on the CARES Act, which is passed. There are people in Congress that voted on the Patriot Act, TARP, and CARES Act. They're still in Congress.
Maybe, but see, the thing is, if that happens, then wars are not that bullish for the dollar. A lot of people think that wars are bullish for the dollar, but most wars have actually devalued the dollar. In the same way, when Germany finished its First World War and the socialists put in Weimar, you had a lot of inflation. You had a huge hyperinflation. You had inflation, and you know how that story. I know you know the story in general, but you had as you were going on, you had like literally 50% month to month growth in the general price level, right? Or not level. I hate using the word level in prices. But the thing about Germany was that because of Gresham's law, all the gold disappeared, all the foreign currencies disappeared. The government helped that along, of course, by restricting the use of those things. But the fact that we have cryptocurrency today, when I think about what happened in Weimar, I think, well, the difference today is that we do have, like you say, we do have that other alternative, right? Now, I mean, we have challenges in the crypto area on the scaling front, but I think that those innovations will come. We can't be too impatient about them, but those innovations will come. But
no, I argue that we actually need to have a DEFCON 1 Manhattan Project mentality around that. There is one of the things that I think is the most frustrating about this is people say, well, like they'll say like Rome wasn't built in a day or whatever. It's like the original design 15 years ago contemplated being able to do all of this. Exactly. Like it's not like we're sitting here trying to tinker with something and try to figure out how to do this. The original design was there 15 years ago. And because central banks and banks and others have figured this out, they've actually innovated around it. And then we've sat here with a hijacked narrative trying to justify manufactured scarcity. The tech already works. We're just not using it. And so when the CBDC is rolled out, what are people going to use Bitcoin? It's going to cost $5,000 to do a transaction, even using it as digital gold. It's not, we don't have any time.
I don't know
to
about
wait.
that.
We have zero time. If it was $50 in 8 days in 2017 with a small number of people trying to use 3 or 4 retailers, then what do you think is going to happen if they announce CBDCs and everybody perceives this to be where they need to go in order to use money as an alternative to CBDCs? It would be.
I still honestly believe that Bitcoin has been disruptive to them, which is why we're getting the reaction to it and why they're trying to co-opt it, why they're trying to undermine it. So I think
they have,
but because it's been disruptive to them. And I also believe that it's still a good onboarding currency for the noob, not just for the convenience, but for the relative convenience over other cryptos at the moment, but also because I lost my train of thought there. Sorry.
Yeah, you were saying that that you think Bitcoin is a good entry for people that are new to crypto,
and also for learning experience is what I was going to say. Yeah, to learn what crypto is, and then once they see, I mean, we all went through that process. We all loved Bitcoin at one point, BTC.
I guess
I did not go through that process. Like I understood Bitcoin as cash, I understood Bitcoin as a supercomputer, actually.
No, but you did go through the process of
but not as digital gold.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is that it still will be a learning process, even though it's digital gold, right? It'll still be a learning. What do you call it? Like a lever for people, right? And they'll realize. I think people will realize. Well, you know, these guys at Aaron Day and the Dollar Vigilante and these guys they got a point. You know, these things aren't fungible. It's not much better than a CBDC, et cetera, et cetera. I think that they will realize that eventually, but we have to give that time, I think, right?
So I guess what I would argue is if I'm going to go out and spend 4 hours teaching somebody something, I'm not going to teach them the wrong thing to use with the wrong narrative, hoping that they then stumble across the right narrative in the fullness of time. We don't have that kind of time. So if I'm going to onboard somebody and I'm going to show them, here's how you use a crypto wallet, here's how you pay bills with it, here's how you buy something today, I'm not going to give them a Bitcoin ETF, nor am I going to give them Bitcoin directly because it's not cost effective.
I'm not suggesting you change anything you're doing, Aaron. I'm just saying that for the most part, Bitcoin will still be a learning lever for most people.
It will be, and I guess the problem that I have with it, the frustration that I have with it is because I've been going through all of these books, the Bitcoin Standard, Layered Money, all of the propaganda, and it's tough because because by the way, and I say this because even today I wrote something, I joked around, I said, you know, BlackRock bought 42 million Bitcoin, and the post went viral. And, you know, like 300,000 people read it. And of course, all the Bitcoin maxis are like, there'll only be, 21 million Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, yeah, but welcome to ETFs. Welcome to paper Bitcoin. Here's how the gold market works. And it erupted. But you have Bitcoin maxis that have been around that know better, that have actually been around for 10 years. And they just parrot. There's the amount of propaganda on this thing is tough. And so I feel like that, unfortunately, we need to provide education on what these things are supposed to do and what they can do in the proper context.
Yeah, I appreciate you for that. Totally, I agree. So let me just wrap up. I think I've talked out whatever minor differences or whatever differences we have. But and the reason I wanted to do this, by the way, Aaron, is just because I've been writing about this to our subscribers, and I have a certain take, and then you come on with a different take. So I want to try to, let people see why we have different takes, for example, right? And I guess if you want to summarize my view, it's basically that I see that I see that the CBDC is sort of like it's a reaction by the disrupted, and those that are sort of in their last I think we're in the last few innings of the dollar system. So I see it like a Hail Mary. Like they don't know they gave up on the SDR. They don't have any other go-to. And then somebody came up with the CBDC and they're latching onto it as sort of like, this has got to be it. This is going to save us, right? And so I see it as sort of like a wet dream for the globalists, for the socialist bankers. And I see it as relatively just another government copy of what the market is doing, has done. A worse copy, obviously. And my main emphasis is that, and I'm not saying fight Aaron Day on educating people about other currencies. No, my emphasis is that, sure, I mean, CBDCs are just another dick currency, but the real fight is ending the Fed, because until we end, you're not going to be able to get any sound money, no matter, even if we solve the scaling problem, right? You're not going to have, that's just not going to replace the dollar unless the dollar has been in collapse mode and the people are ready to end the Fed or abolish the Fed and give up on central banking and come over to our side. That's until then, they're just going to, you're right, they're going to keep pushing for it. It's going to keep moving in that direction, but it's going to cost them. And I don't see any upside to them, which I think you agree with too. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. I guess I also say, when I ran for president, every day I wore one shirt and it had a heart on it. At the top, it said, "Bank run now, halt CBDCs, stop World War III, end the Fed." That was the entirety of my campaign. The entirety of my campaign was, if we stop using the dollar, that's how we accomplish all those things. That's how we end the Fed. And that's been my basis. I wish I shared your optimism about the resistance, because I look at it and I see, while libertarianism has grown, I mean, I say this as somebody who was the chair of the Free State Project, who lives in New Hampshire and everything else. It's also been very fragmented, and it's also been very subject to manipulation. And there are a lot of our good people that are actually in prison, unfortunately, for engaging in involuntary behavior. I actually view that what they're doing is it a last gasp, or is it the culmination of 50 years of planning? The technocracy movement to transition from a price to an energy credit-based system started in the early 1930s. So this idea is something that you can even go to the Technocracy Inc. website today and see their materials. They now have what they've lacked is the technical ability to try something like this. And so what we see with MasterCard and others is they're actually building these things. And so did they create, did they innovate? No, they copied. But unfortunately, they copied while simultaneously hijacking. So they took Bitcoin and managed to cleverly shift the narrative and throttle the technology, while at the same time developing something behind the scenes that, from the consumer perspective, will work better. It doesn't have the advantages of being separated from state. So, but again, I think we can win. I think we need to start using alternatives, like for commerce. People need to have something that they can actually use as the alternative for day-to-day transactions.
If I may interrupt, sorry to be abrupt, I think you are optimistic, because otherwise you wouldn't be acting in trying to educate people on the alternative. So you obviously somehow inside believe that there's a way out, and that you must have some optimism. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be wasting your energy.
I do have optimism, but I guess, and even just in the last, I'd say 4 months, I think the most challenging thing is the inside debate, the internal debate. Because there isn't that we should be. I view that we should be at like DEFCON 1 and all, and I'll be figuring out how do we get alternatives that people can use, and instead we are fractured.
Well,
most of crypto is still focused on, well, my coin has a higher market cap, therefore it's winning. And my point is, all of crypto and all of alternative, precious metals is we're facing an existential threat. We have to work together, even to the level of perhaps tokenizing precious metals, all combined. We need a combined solution because they've got something that does 1.8 million transactions per second, and they can roll it out in an emergency. And what are we going to offer? What do we have? Because words aren't going to do it. We can't sell them on the idea of, well, central bank digital currencies are bad if what the consumer's facing is, do you want to have access to your money or not?
Well, I think where we can win is that the banking system, you know, when we had the 2008 crisis, for 2 years following that, outside of the Bitcoin launch, there was a lot of my friends in Wall Street were moving their money around and taking their money out of banks, and moving into places where they thought would be more safe, which usually just meant bigger banks, right? So, you know, they moved their money to the too big to fail banks. But the banks in that crisis got a bad rap, and the Fed has been fighting a PR campaign about it ever since. And even today, we know the banking system is insolvent and it's burdened by a lot of bad loans and so forth. And it's a ticking time bomb. So I think when we have our next economic crisis, the banks are going to be extremely revealed, and people are not going to want to have their money in the banks. And it's going to be an easier argument to sell crypto, in my opinion. So I think that's another source of optimism that I have in that.
Yeah, provided that all the on and off ramps haven't been completely shut down.
But if they have, we'll figure out how to create new ones.
Well, see, I guess that to me, that's the challenge, because right now, you know, even local Bitcoin has been shut down. When I look at Ian Freeman, who actually introduced Roger Ver to Bitcoin in 2010 and had ATMs around New Hampshire. It's like there's less prevalence. There's not even in-person stuff now. And so this is my concern. I guess it's not so much my concern. I guess what I want to say is, if I could express urgency, there is the urgency of people getting self-custody crypto and starting to use it is now, because they have been incredibly effective at making it much more difficult, even in person. And that's why I worry about the idea that we have time, because because I live on this stuff. I don't think we have time, because it's become much more difficult month by month for me to actually use these. And the regulation is having huge impact.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed, I'm sorry, Ed, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to something Aaron was saying. For what it's worth, in my personal life, when it comes to dealing with people and businesses, I've been suggesting merchants adopt Bitcoin, and I've noticed that they give you kind of a blank stare at first, but I can see them calculating it in their head, whether it'd be worth it. Because some of them have said, you know, it would be pretty simple. I just have to suggest that I accept Bitcoin, right? You know, and for what it's worth, I don't know if that's an anecdotal little piece of my.
Well, have they been taking you up on it?
Not yet. But I feel that it's just because they feel intimidated by it.
Yeah, I mean, I always tip with Goldbacks. I've actually been giving people Zano, which is a privacy coin. One of the good things about being in New Hampshire is, and part of the Free State Project is, I can already buy milk and I can already buy meat, grass-fed meat with alternative currencies. That kind of thing has been around here for a while. That is not a luxury that most people have. But the way that happens is just one by one, doing it exactly the way that you described. Suggest to everybody that you interact with, hey, you know, would you consider doing this? Because Goldbacks, there are 2,000 merchants now across the country that take Goldbacks. There are 150 in New Hampshire, and that's growing all the time. And so it's, you know, I say this is why when it gets down to this political issue, it's like everybody's wasting their time focusing on one decision to make 90 days from now that will have no impact, because in the reality of things, we're going to end up with most of the same no matter what. But we make 35,000 decisions every day. And so that's where we can make the difference in terms of our personal lives and what we choose to do. And choosing to use alternative currencies, to me, is one of the highest leverage things that we can do just on a day-to-day basis to promote freedom and voluntary trade.
Yeah.
So, guys, I don't want to end this conversation. Do you guys have to go? Because I do have to go. I do.
Sorry.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well,
That's
I
too
enjoyed
bad,
the
Ed.
conversation. I had
Yeah,
a
well,
great
'cause
time. So
we barely
Yeah, me
just broke
too.
down
Me
the
too.
problem, and I wanted to start talking about the actual solutions. I
Okay.
wish you had more time, Ed, with us.
I'll wait. I'll see if where it goes
Okay.
here. I am kind of pressed, but
Okay. So, uh, Aaron, what we've started to notice is that what really brings people together in crypto development, and after we were fractured into many different altcoins, is networks that are profitable to work in. And we've seen that happen with BTC since Ordinals. We've seen that happen with Solana. And the problem that I see with smaller networks is that they don't have the cap, they don't have the market cap big enough so that people can come in and partake in some aspect of on-chain entrepreneurship. So a lot of what we see happening with privacy coins like Monero is that um, they don't open you up to that. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that their purpose is to be used as digital cash. As of right now, there are developments happening within BTC that make me hopeful. There are two implementations right now being pushed to enable smart contracts on BTC. One of them is OpCat, which is the re-enabling of an opcode, and the other one is OpNet, which is a meta protocol. And they both, in their own way, achieve the same end, which is turning Bitcoin into an Ethereum-like asset, where you can create, DeFi, smart contracts, DAOs. Another innovation that I'm pretty excited for is a fork happening within BTC called Fractal. Now, this Fractal fork is very much a big blocker version of Bitcoin that is forking off of BTC while being merge mined with BTC. And they're selling it as a second layer or as an overlay network. They're just using different buzzwords so it doesn't trigger people into thinking that there is an actual big blocker version of Bitcoin being proposed as a second layer for BTC. So that will allow BTC to have capabilities even of zero confirmation and microtransactions that we saw in big blocker versions of Bitcoin like BSV and Bitcoin Cash within BTC. What I do, and I think you agree with me in this, Aaron, is that the core devs will not want to scale the block size of the mainnet. And I think that one of the main reasons for that is because it provides a layer of surveillance. Whereas if you allow for the mainnet to actually expand in block size and in script size, you create more opportunities for obfuscation and for different types of cryptographic methodologies to be implemented within tokens on chain that will give you more privacy. So we're at the point right now where what was thought impossible within BTC when Ordinals launched is now a reality. A lot of people would look at me and tell me, Raf, this is ridiculous. This Ordinal things will never amount to much. They're just tokens. They're just JSON files. But now we're seeing the complete embrace of a big blocker architecture with Fractal, with microtransactions, with zero confirmations transactions. And we're seeing the complete embrace through two different methodologies that give you smart contracts on chain. Unless there is a miracle that somehow everyone moves to a more scalable version of Bitcoin now, that on mainnet is already scalable, I think that the best thing we have at the present moment is to follow those economic incentives so that people become more aware within BTC of the necessity to scale the block size so that we can have the money, the digital cash aspect of Bitcoin back on mainnet. So what are your thoughts, Aaron, on that?
I think it would be easier to win elections and get people to vote to throw out the Federal Reserve than it would be to actually get changes made within BTC. And I don't actually think that we have that much time. Part of the problem that I actually don't think all of crypto combined is significant. I mean, you look at some of these applications about, DeFi and everything else. These are like the size of video game markets. This isn't the problem that we have is we still don't have peer-to-peer digital cash. We don't have the core thing that it was supposed to be. And now we have an existential threat coming from folks that have leapfrogged us in technology. So I don't think that we need the bells and whistles. We still need the core peer-to-peer cash. And unfortunately now, because of the way that Bitcoin has happened to develop, I think for most people, it can be tracked and it's not fungible. So I think that if the CBDC threat is real, we're going to need something that's fungible. We're going to need some privacy alternatives as a way to defeat this. I'm also not saying that it's easy. And I think it's a multi-asset approach. And by the way, if what you're saying works, I mean, if Fractal works or whatever, then what I do is when I talk to people, I promote multiple cryptos. And I used to have BSV and BTC in there, right? Like so I'm not even wedded to any specific, like I have a rolling list of cryptos because we need to have a combined transaction per second capacity, and we need to have a combined amount of buying power, which is why it's precious metals and various cryptos. So if what you're saying is true, then great. I'd be excited about it. I don't know that the bottleneck is dev talent developing smart contracts. I think that from my experience, trying to use crypto for day-to-day payments, the biggest challenge is point of sale system and tools for merchants that makes it easy for them to take alternative assets. That's actually the pain point for adoption, which is why I'm trying to work on cobbling together an open source tool so that it can't be centralized and shut down, that can take multiple cryptocurrencies that combine, provide a solution for merchants where the transaction fees are low, but yet there's enough buying power where it's worthwhile for them to start taking it as an alternative. So, and if what you're saying, if Fractal becomes part of it, fine. I'd love it if BTC increased the block limit. I'd use it in a minute. I'd absolutely be on board. But do I think it's spending time trying to? I think trying to get BTC to increase block size is like trying to fix the mafia from the inside. I could be wrong, but I view it the same as trying to fix the government from the inside. And if I am wrong, then fine. I'll be the first to jump on to the other approach. I've written several things today that have been somewhat controversial about this, but I wrote a scenario about. Everybody always talks about this 21 million coin cap. I think they'll increase the supply of Bitcoin before they increase the block size. I truly believe that. You look at the statements that Peter Todd has made. I don't need to explain this to you. You know this viscerally, right? The whole point of this system was the mining rewards were just supposed to be a subsidy to secure the network until such time as it was doing MasterCard or Visa level transaction volume, and where the miners had viable businesses actually processing transactions. That was the whole purpose. And they've destroyed that. So what's going to happen the next halving? The only way, like I view mining as almost being absurd, which is why Marathon just announced $80 million loss. One of the other ones announced a big loss. I mean, you're essentially like buying hash power and using hash power as to buy a ticket at a roulette wheel. It's kind of absurd, and it's not what it was supposed to be. And so at some point, you're already seeing miners have some difficulties with this. At some point, I can see it now. They're going to say, oh, well, a lot of people lost their coins. So the 21 million really doesn't need to be fixed. We need to take into account how many of these coins were lost. So then they're going to start with a small increase, right? And then we're going to find out it's going to turn out to be, unless they go for big blocks. But I feel like right now they're going to double down on the digital gold narrative before they're going to actually agree to increase the block size. I hope I'm wrong on that, but
bingo. You hit the nail on the head. See, the thing is that we do have better technology, and something that I have thought about. I think about this all the time, and what I've come to realize is that the digital gold narrative was just emphatic on store of value, increasing visibility, increasing growth in market cap, which in turn onboards, gets more visibility, gets more merchants, and therefore it's and more merchants accepting it as cash would lead to more perceived value, and which would lead to more of a reason to hodl. So hodl was never an end of itself in early Bitcoin. Hodl in early Bitcoin was an idea based around its use as digital cash.
Why won't you guys understand what I'm trying to say is that you can't avoid any of these cryptos from being digital gold right now because the Fed exists and Gresham's law exists. And
we completely agree with you, Ed.
Right.
The difference is that there's an emphasis here that I want to touch on, because when we talk about Monero, the rhetoric we get is use it as cash. Use Monero, hodl Bitcoin is the mantra you hear that you don't think much of, but in my opinion,
no.
I see it as a psychological conditioning that the crypto masses are getting, that you store value in Bitcoin and you spend Monero. And when you ask them for why is that, why don't you hodl Monero? Their answer is, well, because you can't do much with Bitcoin but hodl. Fair enough. But there's more here to it that is being left unsaid, which is, why can't we espouse the same understanding for Monero and use Monero as a store of value? Why isn't that emphasized?
Well, because you get a lot of people, most people don't understand anything, right? Like I said, even with Goldbugs, I've spent 25 years trying to educate Goldbugs on gold, and you have the same problem. There's a lot of people in the cryptocurrency area that don't understand economics or money or any of that, right?
Yeah, but the psychological conditioning on them works.
Well, that's why it works. Why
exactly? So why can't we use that in our favor and say, well, actually, Monero, it does everything you ever wanted BTC to be.
I love it.
Therefore, there should be an emphasis on this. If you're going to hodl anything, you should hodl Monero. If there should be,
I agree.
If you have a business and you want like a digital asset on your treasury that is digital gold for real in its fundamental form, let it be Monero, not something that invites financial voyeurism like BTC.
I agree with that. And by the way, that's what I'm doing. So when I do these workshops, I'm using Cake Wallet. I'm giving people Moneros. I'm giving people that have never touched cryptocurrency in their entire life, and their first introduction to cryptocurrency is Monero. That is actually the cornerstone thing that I'm introducing people to. As to why it hasn't happened, look, a lot of crypto is people. I've been to 22 states. A lot of crypto is people in an echo chamber. In fact, it's almost all people in an echo chamber. So a lot of these products have been designed. I've said this several times. It's 20-year-old dudes developing products for 20-year-old dudes. There's been no focus on user interface. Nobody sat in front of it. There are boomers. There are people out there that have significant net worth that are now worried about this stuff. That have no one sat down in front of them and actually showed them how to do it. It's actually that basic, right? Because in the privacy communities, it's a pretty small group, right? It's not exactly a huge group. And I think a lot of the events that are privacy coin focused, you wouldn't necessarily invite, boomers that are just newly waking up to tyranny and central banks. So it's just a matter of marketing and emphasis. And that's why Monero is part of it. And so, but to me also, Zano is important because money only represents 4% of global assets. Everything is going to be tokenized. This article that I just wrote, it's like 9,000 words. I will send it to both of you. I've been working on it for a long time. I'm trying to lay out to people that whether you like it or not, everything is going to be tokenized. And there's a problem in the crypto space, which is that when you say tokenized to people in the crypto space, they think NFTs and they think meme coins. And the problem is, behind the scenes, what the banks are working on, what Wall Street's working on in the DTCC is they're working on tokenizing all of our stocks, all of our bonds. I mean, eventually they're going to get around to real estate. Like they're working on the actual real world stuff. But when they tokenize it, it's going to be on a platform that is centrally controlled, that can be monitored, that can be programmed and can be censored. But that's actually the default. And most of crypto is sitting around thinking what token is going to be if I make a hot dog token on Solano. Let's get a whole bunch of people together and push it to $1.50. Like unfortunately, so this article that I wrote is long, but I'm going to go through 50 different categories of assets that can be tokenized. It's like a $1.5 quadrillion worth of assets that you could tokenize and trade privately. To me, that's an important thing to be able to do, is to be able to privately tokenize and trade your own assets. That's another way out of this thing.
I couldn't agree more. I wish the gold-backed tokens would gain some traction as well. The problem though with gold is, of course, that it's physical. So because it's physical, you need to store it, and because that, the government knows where the storages are. And I've always kind of conceptualized, hypothetically, I don't think it's possible, but I've always kind of conceptualized, wouldn't it be great if we could create a crypto, and I even have a name for it. I've called it Satoshi's Gold, where the gold, the storage facilities are unknown, right? Where they're hidden through the crypto, somehow through some of the crypto technology, right? And where the storers earn crypto for storing it, but I'm not a dev, so I'm not like, I can't figure out how realistic or how feasible such a thing is, but it kind of highlights the problem with the gold-backed tokens, is that you have to have physical storage of the gold somewhere, and everybody knows that. So that's sort of a risk, I guess. But
well, there are actually two things related to that, and this is one of the things. So I've actually tokenized, just as a sample, I've tokenized and sold a Goldback. Not that that's the end all be all use case, but it's a private token. One of the problems right now is I can buy Goldbacks and I can use these Goldbacks. So when I give my barber or whatever, I tip somebody in a Goldback, they get the Goldback and it's not tracked. Most of the tokenized gold you buy right now it's on Ethereum. It can be tracked. There's usually some KYC, AML even involved with the token. So to be able to create privacy tokens that are backed by gold, that takes care of one problem. Then your point about the centralization is another. And there's actually a guy in Utah who's working on a model right now to try to use, because there are like 14,000 gold and pawn shops throughout the United States. So to try to come up with a decentralized way. So if you could use privacy tokens and then somehow put together this decentralized network, and maybe you layer insurance on there as a way to help. This is part of what I'm trying to build into the point of sale solution that I'm building, is tokenized gold and certain, whatever we can get that works, whatever we can cobble together that works. And that is one of the ideas that I think is really interesting.
I hope you keep me posted on that, because I have a high level of interest in that.
Okay.
One couple things I just wanted to add in there is, Raphael, you mentioned that the community has been fractured, and I think it's more. I think it's a natural. I don't want to call it natural. I mean, obviously, I agree with the reasoning or the claims that you guys are making about the undermining of Bitcoin and the co-opting of Bitcoin. But there's a difference in terms of fractured in the crypto community and in terms of fractured within the political community, right? So we were talking about libertarian divisions, and a lot of that is political. They throw these, and you're right, it's manipulated, it's political. They throw these issues at us like borders and immigration. Even Trump was, I think when Trump first came in, he sort of divided the libertarians because a lot of them went with Trump, and obviously others didn't think Trump was a libertarian. And so these things I think they do this on purpose to divide the libertarians for sure. But that's a political move, and there's probably some of that in crypto, obviously. But for the most part, I see the altcoins and the other cryptos as just competition, right? And you need that, and it keeps everybody on their toes. If you didn't have the competition, there'd be no progress, right? You know that, right? So I think that the number of coins out there, a lot of them are probably malinvestments and so forth, but it's good to have a lot of competition in the crypto space, in my opinion, because especially since we haven't solved the core problem of scaling and so forth. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I don't know what the fractals design is. I have to look into that and read up on that a little more. But um, I don't like it. I don't like the crypto that I believe is going to have a chance at being money. Uh, enabling smart contracts on the blockchain, because that I think tends towards it undermines the fungibility part of it, right? If you have smart contracts on the coins, right? So I'd rather not have that part, but maybe there's a benefit there that I haven't fully cognitively accepted yet.
So the argument that the small blockers made, in its essence, was not wrong, but it was always going to be, at the very least, very poorly executed within the Bitcoin protocol. Because if you really want sound digital gold, sound digital cash, a real store of value, then you needed to have privacy by default, like Monero, like Pirate Chain. So where we find ourselves right now is within a world of crypto that is hungry to make money now. And that is fueled by what I consider a psychological conditioning that really falls back not to technology, but to an idea. And the idea is that, and it's an idea that was instilled in people. But the idea is very simple, that Bitcoin is a place to store value. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that just keeps building up. And notice that no other cryptocurrency makes that claim. No other cryptocurrency makes that claim. They even see, almost like, a lot of them even fall into the mistake that I consider of seeing store of value as almost like a dirty word. Like, oh, well, Monero is to be used as cash. It has actual utility. We're not just a store of value. Use Monero. I think hodling, saving, is a form of utility in and of itself, but that wouldn't have happened. The whole narrative that took off within BTC of store value, of hodl, wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a group of people who adhere to that idea.
Like, I think it would. I disagree.
I don't think so, Ed. I don't think so.
I think it would have happened because aggression. Because no matter what, we haven't solved the scaling problem in crypto, right? So we don't have. We don't have a money yet. We have potential money. We don't have money yet.
We have, in terms of scaling, we have. It's what I'm trying to emphasize, that this is more of a mental issue, because arguably, we all understand that Monero is better money. It's a better store of value. It's better technology. But yet, even the people within Monero will not consider Monero as a place, as a currency to hodl. They see it more as a pass-through for voluntary exchange.
To me, that's just being in the club kind of thinking. It's not a cohesive argument, in my opinion, right? So I'm just saying they're wrong, right? So they're if they want to try to, if you want to try to use Monero as money, fine, go ahead and do that. But if the Fed continues to destroy the dollar and cryptocurrency values rise, you're using as an asset for money, basically, right? And so there's a strong, there's some psychological work there, but that's the whole point of Gresham is to create an incentive. It creates an incentive where you hoard the good money and you use the shitty money, right? The overvalued. Right?
But see, if that was the case, then people would be hoarding Monero over BTC.
No, because yes, they will, in my opinion, they will. But where the problem is there, in my opinion, is the war they're waging on privacy in general, right? the phrase, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't be worried about your privacy, right? Or the propaganda that, oh, these privacy coins are used by terrorists or criminals. That's a war. We're against. That's the psyop that maybe you're referring to a little bit. Is just a psyop against privacy in general, not just the currencies, but in general. Privacy in general is under attack by the totalitarian state, right? So, in my opinion, Monero hasn't gained traction because people have a weird view about the privacy coins. They think they're dark money, bad money. They bought into that propaganda. We have to overcome that ideologically, in my opinion.
Well, we have to overcome it, and there's also a marketing aspect to it, because in a way we've done it to ourselves, because a lot of, I think, the marketing for Monero has been that it is kind of, not that it's necessarily used for dark purposes, but a lot of the edgy marketing of it hasn't been. Look, I want to explain to somebody
Case in point. Case in point. Just look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, so I want Monero so that I can buy grass-fed meat, so that I can buy raw milk. I want it so that the products that I use today, so that I can actually travel without having my money shut off because I've used too much carbon through, driving too much or flying too much. And I just put this article out. I'm going to do one on privacy as well. And there's a lot of this is just marketing. We need to change the marketing. But I do think that there's an opportunity, because the opportunity is there are millions of people that have woken up that are now aware of this. We have allies in the health freedom area. We have allies in the food freedom area. We have all of these different related segments that are not in crypto. Like a lot of the health freedom people, they're not in crypto. And when I explained to them, look, when they implement CBDCs, then it'll be easy for them to say, if you don't take this vaccine, we're going to shut off your money. Well, now all of a sudden, health freedom people are interested in talking about cryptocurrency. And there are a lot of segments that are like that. So this is a real opportunity, but we have to be proactive and try to market outside. We need to stop doing the marketing within, because there's so few people actually using cryptocurrency that 98% of the market is untapped. So we just need to change our marketing, change our positioning, and just retool. And I do believe we can do that. That's what I'm trying to do. And we need obviously more people to do that. Let's do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think we hit the nail on the head, Aaron. I think that's what we should focus on. If there is a DEFCON 1 initiative, that's it. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the marketing. So I propose that we figure it out, maybe have a summit where we bring health freedom people and just brainstorm how to better market the best of technology. How about we do that?
Well, yeah, and you know what you can do? You can take each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and those are 17 market segments of people that, if they were aware of those strategic development goals, they would want to have nothing to do with it. Those are 17 market segments that are allies for us. Yeah, and so, this is a huge thing. And again, I do think. But we still are going to come down to, we need better tools. We still need a point of sale system, and I'm trying to figure out how to get the people together to work on that. And I'm pulling that together. But we have to make it easy. We have to make it so that, because when I sit in front of 100 people, and everybody gets a Goldback, I show them a Goldback. They understand how this works. But I'll tell you, just even going through a basic process of setting up a wallet, even if you make it easy, even if you use a faucet where all they have to do is scan a QR code, it's still just not as user-friendly as Venmo. It's not as user-friendly as Apple Pay or Google Pay. If we solve that, people will use it. We don't have the barrier anymore of, will people use digital money? Everybody's going to use digital money. That we don't have to cross that. We just need to make our version of it as easy to use as their version of it. And we can do it, but we have to focus the attention on it. And it's, I think we can do it.
It's a marketing problem. It really is. It comes down to a marketing problem. We really need to have a big masterminding on how to market privacy better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you guys are saying there. And that's always been the problem with crypto, is that they're open source currencies that nobody has any skin in the game other than their bag, And so, if we don't have activists like you guys working on the marketing, nobody will, right? So, Yeah, we got to do that. But that's one difference between crypto and in a regular business, where somebody has ownership and they'll put together a marketing program because they want to earn a profit. That incentive is lacking in crypto in a way, right?
This exact thing came up with Zano because Roger Ver introduced me to it. And at first I was like, it uses proof of work and proof of stake. And I'm like, and then I looked into it and then he's like, no, really, you should look at it. And I looked into it. And I found that so many people have their worldview about the elements that can go into a crypto based on how Bitcoin works. So for instance, one of the things that people will say is, well, it can't have a pre-mine. If it's a pre-mine, then that means it's automatically a scam. It can't have raised money or have done an ICO. And I mean, in some cases, there might be legal issues with that. But I look at Bitcoin and I say the lack of pre-mine and the lack of funding is what allowed it to be hijacked because these developers don't do the work for free. They were paid by somebody. Zano implemented a thing where they actually did a pre-mine, but they have something called an auditable wallet so that you can actually see how the funds are being spent. It's been around for 5 years. So they do have, so in that case, I think that's something that they did right. Although 2 years ago, I would have been saying, I'm not going to be involved with a project that has a pre-mine. So I think there's just a lot of thinking that's so defined. To me, what made Bitcoin great was the entirety of it, the economic system and all of the elements of it. But when you tear apart the system, the whole thing kind of falls down. And so a lot of people are taking the individual elements of Bitcoin and saying, well, does your project have this specific individual item? And it's like, well, who cares? The Bitcoin was great because it worked all together and you pull one of those things off and now it unravels. And so, but I agree with you that you have to have funding because I've been involved with projects that are open source projects that had no funding and they failed because there was nobody to do development work. There was nobody to do marketing. You need to have money, and we shouldn't be embarrassed to talk about this. I don't know how somehow libertarians and capitalists have gotten into this. Somehow we pigeonholed ourselves into being squeamish about the idea of there being money to invest in something, which that's a psyop on a whole different level.
100%. I agree with everything you just said. 100%.
Yeah, I think we hit the nail on the head, guys. So how do we move forward?
Just I guess we just have to continue doing what we're doing, and I don't see any other way.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to continue. I'm continuing to do my workshops. I mean, I'm going to be at Monerotopia. I don't know if you guys are going to be at Monerotopia. Yeah,
definitely going to be there.
Maybe.
I'll be there.
Maybe we should plan some. Maybe we should put together a group of people and have a breakout on this topic, because we're going to have a lot of people there that are relevant to this conversation, I think.
Yeah,
okay,
I'd like to.
I think that's a great idea.
When is it? When is it?
It's in November.
I think it's November the 14th through the 17th in Mexico City.
Mexico City. Well, maybe I will go.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. And if you're going, you should speak. I can get you on the roster.
I think I've said everything I can think of.
Oh, I'm speaking. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh,
I'm already speaking. So, but
awesome.
I'm
and
really.
If you're going, you better speak.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I kind of avoid that kind of thing. You know that.
I mean, you did a great job here. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We could. We should do a roundtable or something too.
I think so. I think it's necessary. And the cool thing about Monerotopia is that it's going to bring a lot of different privacy coin projects together. It's not just Monero, and the Crypto Vigilante will be involved. Maybe doing an online conference aspect to Monerotopia. We're in talks about that. We did that once 2 years ago. We might do it again, where I will be hosting tickets to Monerotopia online as a streaming service.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah,
great.
So that would be pretty cool. And you got more details on that later. But that's we did that once already. We're working through it at this moment, and it might be something that we will be offering. Not sure yet, but that's the idea.
That sounds good. I have to get going here. So,
look, I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you for having me on. I thought it was very productive and very, it was just great to have good, intelligent back and forth on this.
Likewise, my friend.
I think that we not just only expose the problem, but I think we've realized what the real issue is here. And it doesn't take for any technological expertise. It comes down to branding. Something that everyone's involved in now in social media. We're all involved in branding just by posting on social media. So I think this is going to be very helpful for the crypto space and the privacy coin community in particular. But I do, I think you hit the nail on the head, guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna let you guys go. Here's my cool coffee mug from Anarchapulco, and don't forget we will be having Librapulco in Liberland in September. Go to anarchapulco.com and make sure you sign up if you're in the area, or just fly across the world to join us. Jeff will be there. I'll be there speaking as well. Ed, are you speaking at Librapulco?
No, I don't want to go there.
Okay. You want to stay away from Europe? Okay.
Yeah, I want to stay away from Europe.
All right. I don't blame you. But I'll be there. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. Thank you guys for your time.
Make sure you bring your gun. You'll probably need
to
it.
Europe. Maybe in Liberland they sell guns. I don't know.
Yeah, or your knife with the pointy part taken away.
Oh God. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's the thing. You can't live in fear. So
I agree.
You can't. You can avoid them. You can avoid some odd spots.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like everything. All right, guys. Well, peace, love, anarchy. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Now we are dealing with a possible world war. Some will say we are already in a world war. My condolences and prayers go out to everyone suffering under tyranny. It really sucks. I'm really sorry. But it seems as if people are starting to wake up regarding crypto more and more each day. And so it's in the description right here to read, where we give our secret sauce and what we teach our subscribers, because things are just that bad. You know, everyone needs this information. People need to know about sound cryptocurrencies that are actually private by default, and to know how to properly use crypto.